Hello and welcome to Blockchain Gaming World episode 102. I'm your host Jon Jordan, and joining me today is Sam Huber from Admix. How's it going, Sam?
Good, how are you? Glad to be here.
I'm very well. And this is, I'm not worried about this podcast in the sense of being worried, but this is a bit of a different sort of a podcast in terms of the guests from the ones I've had. So 101 episodes talking to people deep into blockchain, and I think now we are sort of moving into a blockchain becoming more of a sort of general thing that everyone's interested in, and so I'm going to be interviewing kind of from a wider selection of guests. So that's exciting, and this is particularly interesting, I think, because we're talking about adverts in the metaverse. Really, that's sort of the title I see here. So before we get too much into that, can you talk a little bit about yourself and Admix, which is the company of which you're CEO?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started my career as an engineer, but quickly moved into starting my own venture, which was building hyper-casual games. So I ran a studio for a couple of years, and my task there was mainly around game design as well as monetizing the games. And that's where I realized how poor the experience was for most of the mobile games where you have advertising in it. These ads were intrusive, rewarded video, interstitial ads that just create a terrible user experience. And it just felt that although the model in itself is great to power free-to-play content, it just the experience was terrible. So we had this idea, which obviously had been tried before, nothing we invented, but to integrate brands within the content itself, create more of a product placement experience, so that at least you don't interrupt the user experience. And in addition, you can have the brands positively contribute to an experience. Like you could unlock, for example, a pair of Nike sneakers and put them on your character, and then they can run faster in the football game or stuff like that. And so that's really the vision. That's been the vision since day one, is how can we create a new revenue stream for creators that always maintain an amazing user experience. And of course, now looking at the technology has scaled. We have 500 plus game publishers that use our technology, including some AAA ones. And we're looking at the next frontier, which is the metaverse, virtual worlds, and obviously we see that brands are going to be a big part of that future as well.
Yeah, no. Even this week, we've seen Nike buying into NFT creators and Adidas doing stuff, and then we can just see all the fashion people obviously all over this. So it's definitely where sort of the market is going. And you should point out as well, you guys recently raised $25 million on your Series B round to sort of push into this space. So you've got sort of the backing of investors as well. But I guess from some people may be thinking, and maybe looking at my background and thinking of that Blade Runner, one of the first sort of sci-fi things where we had a view of the future, and basically, you're walking down the street and you get all these ads sort of jumping out at you, and you're sort of like, oh, this is terrible. We've sort of come up with these new clean metaverses, and the evil advertisers are immediately trying to gain our attention by putting ads for Coca-Cola in there. So you've sort of mentioned it a little bit in your intro that you're talking, you come at it from a creator point of view, but for a sort of player point of view, why do you think that what you're doing makes their experience better?
Well, I think for us the idea has always been to give the power to the creators. So we're not imposing where these ads are going to be, and even if ads will be integrated with the platform, we're not a platform that says you can build content around those ads. That's not what we do. We give a tool to creators of content, game developers mainly, or metaverse, virtual world developer, and then they decide if they want to integrate it or how many they want to integrate. So we're not responsible for that. We provide a tool for them to monetize, and they can decide how well they want to monetize. And the good news is a lot of those creators are very responsible, because they, the Blade Runner experience that you mentioned, you can do that for a little bit, but why would people come back to that? Right? The system just balances itself. If you want to create a great experience, you need to be responsible. And therefore, you can't overload the experience with adverts. But instead, you can use our technology to make it really native and actually add value. For example, as I mentioned before, rewarding people if they experience a brand for a certain amount of time, or having gems or stars that actually are branded by a brand that the user actually like. So you can do all of this stuff without technology. And I think the beauty of Web3 specifically is that the creators are going to be in power, not the platforms. So on YouTube or Instagram, the creator doesn't decide of the experience. So if the platform wanted to overload that with ads, they could do it, and they do. But in Web3, the platform, whether it's the sandbox or Decentraland, they don't build the experience. The creators do. So the creators will have all the power, and this is why we believe that a solution like ours, which is very non-intrusive, very immersive, really fits these new platforms and will be the new way for brands to interact with their users. So calling it advertising, we know how advertising, the word is loaded with just a lot of baggage, right? So we're trying to move away from that. We're going to make moves as well to make sure that what we're selling is not advertising. It's a new way for brands to be part of this new creator economy, which is very different.
Yeah, and absolutely. No, I definitely think we're gaining the first taste of sort of what that interaction between sort of creators and what we call advertisers or brand holders or whatever and users that sort of comes together in a much more holistic way in sort of Web3. So hopefully going forward. One thing I will just my final sort of question on this sort of area before we sort of move on is you mentioned it a few times, kind of non-intrusive ads. And I guess there's an interesting sort of balance between if they're so non-intrusive, then people don't sort of see them. So can you dig a little bit into what you mean by because it's almost like a technical term you use, non-intrusive ads, and how does that be? They're intrusive enough that people see them, but they're not so intrusive that sort of people get annoyed and the advertisers don't feel like they're getting kind of what they want.
Yeah, so what we mean by non-intrusive is really that they don't interrupt the experience, right? We've run various, studies and surveys and, playing a lot of games ourselves. The really annoying part is when you're playing a game and you are interrupted by something that is different, or you want to watch a YouTube video and you have to wait for the pre-roll to end before you can watch it. So this is what creates this animosity towards ads, is the fact that it doesn't let you do what you came to do in the first place. What we're doing, which is product placement, you can see it. We're not saying that you can't see it, but it doesn't stop you, right? It's like walking in the street and you see a mall. If you like the product, you might want to stop. If you don't, you can keep going. It doesn't stop you. So it's the same concept. It's really opt-in. The users decide what they want to interact with or not. And of course, the creator, the more they embed that experience with their game or with their own experience, the better the results. It's the more native things are displayed to you, the better it is. And we see that on other platforms with Google search results. They look very, very similar to organic results. Facebook ads are in the feed. All of this is not a coincidence, right? So that's the same idea.
Okay, cool. Okay, so we'll leave all that stuff behind. We've sort of gone through the basics. Let's get on to some of the detail, because you guys are actually fairly advanced in terms of what you've been up to. So can you talk a little bit into what you've been doing? You've been selling, already auctioning off NFTs that people can place in the metaverse. So can you explain a little bit about how that's been going on, and actually how that sort of works as well?
For sure, yeah, no, I mean, and our vision has always been to be the bridge between brands and between creators. How can brands be part of this new creator economy? So there are things that you can do in Web2, which is fairly limited. Mainly it's advertising, but in Web3 it opens up a lot of other possibilities, and that's what we are specifically excited to explore. And NFTs was an obvious idea. So we partnered with a virtual world called Somnium Space. And what we did with them is creating this very nice futuristic looking cyberpunk billboards, because billboards is kind of the entry point for most advertisers. And we released 15 of them to their Somnium Space community. In Somnium Space, you can buy land and then build on top of that land. And we dropped those NFTs to landowners. There's thousands of landowners now, and we only had 15 billboards. And the promise was that if you own a billboard and you also own a world, and you put the billboard in your world and you have people coming in your world, then brands will place their ads on that billboard, and you would benefit from the ad revenue, right? So it is a passive income NFT that provides a new revenue stream for these creators. And so, yeah, that's what we've done over the past month. There's another week ongoing now with a special edition, but we're going to get to about $500,000 worth of sales across about 15 items. So the average price per billboard is pretty high because on some of them you get 90% revenue share for life. So, if you believe that you're going to have a successful platform, that more people are going to come in, and you're going to capture a big part of what brands are spending in the metaverse, it's a pretty attractive proposition. So yeah, that's what we've done, and that was obviously a proof of concept. We're not saying that brands will only use billboards to advertise in the metaverse, obviously not, but this is step one, right? This is what brands know today, and we're already working on more advanced drops with custom branded NFTs, not just billboards.
Yeah, because that's sort of clearly where it goes, isn't it? I mean, it's almost kind of funny that in those virtual worlds, almost having like an old-fashioned billboard is almost like cool, because it's the first time anyone's done that. So it sort of reverses the fact that people may not like.
Yeah, if it's integrated in a nice way, we have there's a club happening. It's a club night in Somnium Space. We have this billboard with LEDs and brands that can be customized by the owner as well. So it just adds a layer of credibility, and most importantly, create a great revenue stream for those creators.
Do the creators have? Do they have any sort of option over what ads go in there, or is it basically just a sort of stream?
Yeah, so I mean, all of that is going to be plugged to our technology, right? And of course, what Admix provide at the core, it's this marketplace of brands that you can place in your games, and you can select categories, you can filter out categories, you can. You have all these kind of controls where you can even approve down to the creative before it is served. So all of that will be fully released to Somnium Space when we complete our roadmap of integration with them.
Wow, that's great. And how quickly does the next stage come? Which is, you sort of touched upon it then, where basically you have brands dropping their own NFTs in there, which is sort of, in a sense that by that stage, I mean, I guess it's still broadly advertising, but that's sort of a very different advertising than we've ever had before. That you can have these things that potentially could be sort of, very valuable, sort of, and obviously they all have a certain scarcity because they're NFTs on a blockchain, so we know how many there are, and the serial number. I mean, that sort of really inverts the whole kind of advertising industry, which has basically been sort of up to this point annoying people to get your brand in front of their eyes.
I mean, we're very much looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, how quickly does? Go on.
No. I mean, how quickly? I mean, I think it's already happening, right? Some brands are doing that directly with the sandbox, with the Decentraland. We've seen some activations. Obviously, Nike and Adidas going all in. Not every brand will be able to do that and buy $2 million worth of land, but everyone is looking at it. And for us, one of the things that we're doing is always being, how can we create a better user experience? How can we really take advertising at the broader sense, right, to the next level? And in traditional games, in Web 2, it's the options are limited because there's only so much flexibility we have in a game that is completely controlled by a publisher. What can we do? We've done a lot of custom integrations. We've done one with Movember where they took over like a plane in the game and we kitted the whole plane, so that was really cool. But in the metaverse and in Web3 generally, you just have a lot more possibilities because you have NFTs, because you have this sense of ownership of digital goods. So to us, this is how advertising is just the wrong word, right? There should be a new word for brand interactions in Web3 that doesn't have this baggage of Web2, which has been abused. But brands, spending $500 billion a year in digital advertising, again, to reach that audience, they're going to try to find ways to reach that audience in Web3 as well. And it's just about providing them the right tools. The good thing is we can provide them tools that will always put the user experience first. And so that's what we're really excited about. And, it's not about putting banners in games, in the metaverse. Like, this is not where we're stopping. We're starting there. Obviously, that's a proof of concept, but we're making big changes in the products that we're building to adapt what we're doing and facilitate those transactions in the future.
You're going to have to rebrand. You're going to have to change the name of the company, not Admix anymore.
That's it's definitely something that we're thinking of, because it's bigger than advertising, right? The way that brands are interacting with people, yes, an element of that is advertising, but now we're seeing that the creative angle is massive. NFTs, that's here to stay, right? So there is definitely more than purely putting ads in the game.
And obviously, we're talking about sort of the bleeding edge of what's going on here. So this is really sort of 6 months ago, you couldn't do it, sort of thing. But obviously, the enormous advertising industry, still does a lot of sort of quite boring things that it's been doing for maybe 100 years or something, hundreds of years. How quickly do you think brands will get this? Obviously, the sort of the Nikes and the Gucci's and those sort of people, have got it. But when we're talking about, Kellogg's or some of these companies who just haven't, they just don't have needed that. Are we going to see sort of a big sort of disruption of how some brands are just going to be sort of left behind on this sort of thing, because there's only so much. Because some of these brands are not going to be able to sort of build the level of interaction that users want, are they? Because there's some brands who do a lot of advertising, but people they're not sexy brands. So, are they going to sort of struggle? Are they the ones who really maybe need to be more innovative in how they sort of think about this sort of stuff?
I think in terms of speed, I would say that brands are going to embrace this as fast as technology is going to enable them to do, right? So a lot of brands right now are jumping in. There's no real technology. It's kind of a creative play. They have to do everything themselves, figuring out where to buy. We know that, companies like Nike or Adidas, very innovative companies, are great for that. But, sorry, a lot of others would need more hand-holding. So, that's basically where we fit. We think that there's a space to basically provide a gateway to Web3, which will enable these brands to jump in. And of course, as we've seen with every other platform, every other transition before, the ones who are late to the party, the ones who do not believe that this is a change that is here to stay, will be left behind and will struggle. We've seen that with web, we've seen that with social media, and we're going to see that again with Web3.
I mean, I've always been surprised, really, for the last year, how quickly brands have adopted this. In a way, they've adopted sort of Web3 in a much more open way than maybe the games industry. We're seeing now with the games industry, kind of Ubisoft get a lot of pushback from what they're doing, and you kind of think, my assumption would have been those things would have sort of been reversed, and the brands would be stuffy and old-fashioned. But it seems like actually some of the sectors that you think would be more technologically aware, for maybe for particular reasons, not taking advantage of the opportunity. That to me seems quite surprising.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I remember when we started the company and I sat down with my co-founder, and I'm more the gaming guy, he's more the ad guy, and we were looking at, okay, which brands should we get here first? And we looked at that whole list of fashion brands, luxury brands, and we just rolled it out completely. Like fashion brands, they are very particular about the environment. They would never do anything that is not perfect according to them. Gaming is just too much of a risk. And look, 2 years later, every fashion brand is embracing, collaboration with Fortnite, Roblox, NFTs, and they're literally leading the charge. So, it's clear that brands are really trying to stay relevant, and there's so much change at the moment that, it's harder than ever for them to stay relevant by spending 80% of their budget on Facebook and Google. And so when there's something new that actually makes sense, then they're jumping on it. They are desperate to change. There just wasn't anything that would compare in terms of performance and return on investment. So we're very excited by that change. I think it's a very turbulent moment because everything is, up for debate and everything is changing. But I think that's going to lead to a much better experience for the users.
And how does it change sort of you guys? I mean, I guess you've always been sort of fairly focused on the technology because that's sort of always been, that's even before Web3. But does moving to Web3, how does that sort of change, what you compared to what you were like, 2 years ago, say?
Well, it adds a lot of, I would say, different layers of opportunities. So if you're on Web 2, as a technology that kind of plugs on top of games, that's basically where we are. We plug on top of a game, and the publisher decides where they want to place the placements. They can, take us out if they want to. They have a lot of control. Web 3 is very different. You have, as I said, the creators actually own the experience, and we can become one of the creators potentially. And, we can look at land and what it means for brands there. So suddenly, because it's all decentralized and you have all these different layers, that creates a lot more opportunities for players. And that's something that, over the next month or so, you're going to see a lot of news. And to be honest, the way that, things are moving, like I said, the word advertising is about to get a completely new meaning. And this is true for our company as well. What we're going to do in 6 months is going to be very, very different from, the services that we can provide in Web 2.
I guess to a degree, yeah. So you almost flip and become a creator yourself. So you can not necessarily you would be a consumer brand per se, but you're sort of moving much more in that direction than a business brand, aren't you? I won't ask you if you're doing it, but I can imagine you guys having having offices in. So like lots of people are doing that. Somnium Space, Sandbox, all that. Because that's sort of where that's your environment now. So why wouldn't you be there, sort of thing? And I guess not just you, but lots of people have been doing a sort of similar thing. It's going to be really, really interesting. Cool.
Totally
good. Well, I think we'll leave it there. I think we did quite a lot of inverting business models and quite a lot of future gazing. And as you say, maybe in 6 months' time we can come back and see the how things have moved on, because I think this is something that's moving kind of super fast. Yeah, and we'll see how you get on with your rebrand as well. So I'm joking.
Exactly. We might be on a new name next time. Who knows?
Cool, lovely. So thanks very much, Sam. Thanks for your time. We'll keep in touch.
Thank you, John. Thanks. Good to be here.
Cool. And thanks to everyone who has been listening and watching. This is Blockchain Gaming World, where every week we are, talking to the people who are building out this really, amazingly dynamic new sector of gaming. And as we've kind of talked about today, beyond gaming into metaverse or whatever one of those exactly is, we're not quite sure. But just a lot of stuff is changing in this space, and I personally find it interesting, so I hope you do too. Please subscribe through your channels of subscription, and come back next week to see what's going on. See you soon.